Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the big public reveal of ASCM's 2023 Top 10 Trends in Supply Chain. My name is Matt Talbert. I will be moderating this panel. I am not the star of the show today. I'm going to let the panel take a minute each to introduce themselves, starting with Jit.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Matt, for having me. My name is Jit Hinchman, founder of Supply Chain Advisor. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Armand.
Thank you, Matt. I'm Armand van Oostrom. I'm located in the Netherlands. I have a background in supply chain as a consultant and a COO. I now am a senior lecturer at the Hague University of Applied Sciences.
Okay, thank you. And Cara.
Thanks, Matt. So hi, I'm Cara Curtland. I am a data science strategist at HP and happy to be here.
Okay, thank you. Before we jump into the reveal of the trends, I just want to go over the process very quickly. I always like to let our audience know that more went into this than just hopping on a Zoom call and deciding what do we like and what's interesting. There's actually a long, rigorous process. And the first part is creating a team with various backgrounds in different industries, those in academia and those in consulting. And it's also important that we have people from different backgrounds and different geographies. The next step after we've assembled that team, the team will go forth and commence a literature review. They'll just find as much resources as possible. And since the team is so diverse, we very rarely have duplicates. I believe out of the some 400, 500 articles that the group found, there are only 13 duplicates. So that's quite amazing. After they go through that search, then they go through the arduous task of reading all the articles. And there, they'll just pull anything that sounds interesting. We have a process that will help them determine what they think a trend is. And then we'll gather those trends in various Excel spreadsheets and then work together as a team to consolidate those trends. After a series of discussions, we'll get to a list of about, this year it happened to be a final 20, sometimes it's a final 15 or final 17, whichever. And every trend will get a score, 0 to 10 scores, a likelihood, and an impact score. And then after those are calculated, that will help fill out the top 10. After that, each trend is just analyzed in a bit more depth to determine sort of its market share, if you will. How much popularity did a trend gain from, say, this year to the last? Okay. So that's a brief overview. I want to jump into the good stuff. I am going to reveal publicly, these were revealed at conference, but now to our entire LinkedIn community, the top 10 trends, the ASCM top 10 trends of supply chain in 2023. I'm going to let the panel just give a brief overview of what they think about the trends. Jit, I'm going to start with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So it's been quite intense process, really, for me personally. We certainly have, we want to serve the industry. We have the supply chain professional in mind when we look into this trend that we want to put it in. Not only we look what it is that is important for supply chain, for the business to get a perspective on the supply chain, how they're going to get ready for the next 3 to 5 years. What do they need to do? That way they don't find too many surprises, right? That way it's our way that we contribute to make the business be more aware of what's coming in the future. And all of that, we have the team from diverse background from many other countries. This year was led by Olive Zurich, I believe. So, and we discussed into the term that how is it going to impact the business, the people, the talent, and all that. And also, you can see from the trend that is in some way, it's certainly some of them are already here and have been here for quite some time. And I can say that, this is the trend that, made by supply chain professional from various countries, from various background. And also, we also look into how it's impact in terms of network design, in terms of operation, in terms of strategy as well, how you could apply to that. So I think I don't see anything that is surprise at all, but I'm glad that some of the items that need to be highlighted, because more and more that the theme overall this year is supply chain become digital, more that become digitized in the process, in some virtual or cyber area, that we communicate more, we integrate more. You can see that those kind of thing has more increase the significance of data security, cyber security, those kind of things, sustainability as well, I can see. But big data and analytics and certainly digital supply chain become the theme for quite some time now. That's what
Thank you, Jit.
I have. Thank you.
Before I go to Armand and Cara, one thing that's really important I want to mention to everyone listening, this is more your opportunity while the trends are up to ask questions to this amazing panel. I have a view of the chat on the side, so you can start asking your questions now, and I will save them and ask them to the panel. But start thinking about what you want to ask, and then most of this time today is for you to interact with the audience, gain more knowledge from what you see. And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to let the next two panelists sort of give their high-level take of the trends. Armand, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Matt. Just building on what Jit already mentioned, the competitive field has changed quite a lot. If you look at the COVID, what's happening in the Ukraine, those are all accelerators. They forced us to rethink the way we do our supply chain, and I do feel that is visible in our top 10 now. It shows how fast things are evolving. Just look at how the list has evolved, changed from last year. So what you see here are responses, but also proactive actions we can take to make our supply chain ready for the next years. And also what Jit said, these are truly global trends. We've worked with people all over the globe on this, also in languages, more languages than just English. So I think that adds to the power of what we see happening in 3 to 5 years.
Okay. Thank you, Armand. And Cara, you're a sensing veteran. You've had a hand in every single one of the trends that ASCM has come out. So I'm very curious, after having such a view of all the trends that we've gone through, what's your high-level take on the 2023 trends?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So I think we're seeing a lot of the same things at the top and a few new things at the bottom. And overall, as we mentioned, supply chain goes digital was the overall theme that the team came up with as this year's overarching theme. And I think if everyone looks back the last few years, before COVID, before the disruption, supply chain was not a household word. It wasn't part of conversation. And now, when folks can't find their toilet paper at Costco, all of a sudden, supply chain has become known as, wow, what do these guys do, and what's going on? We really are at the point where big data analytics, digital supply chain, all of these things have been on the top of our list with maybe a few different words associated with them. Supply chain risk and resilience right at the top. These have become now part of what we need to do as our competitive advantage, right? Before it was we're moving in that direction. Now, as we're moving out of COVID, moving out of these times of major disruption, we're going to see these trends be sort of either the cost to play or or how we move into the differentiators between those that are marginally successful to those that are more successful, getting that competitive advantage. And I think that's what, as a team, as we look at the research, as we're coming up with these trends, we certainly are having that in mind. What's happening over the next 3 to 5 years? Where should supply chain professionals be investing, and what does it mean for them? What are those top things, and what are the things sort of that they should start changing how they're investing? So I'm actually pleased with how the team came up with these particular trends. But I would say that the top ones are clearly, yes, these are everyone kind of aligned on them. The ones toward the bottom, we had a list of 20, and some of so you might see some that fell off that are still important, right? And some that are there at the bottom of our list that there was debate among the team, right, as to which ones were the most important. But you got to draw the line somewhere, and this was the list that the group came up with. So I think these are definitely ones to keep in mind for the foreseeable future.
Great, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that we have a top 10 and then a next 10. There was a list of 20 that was voted upon. Released today on ASCM's LinkedIn page. When we wrap up, you will see the final report that came of this work. You also see all the faces that put their work into this, but more importantly, you will see at the bottom how the criticality scores of all 20 trends fell into line, so you could see where that line in the sand was drawn, top 10 versus the bottom 10. But to some of your points, Cara, I think the first question I see would be directed to you, because you touch on this a bit. So someone asked, we've known about big data and analytics and supply chain. So what does a supply chain professional have to learn in terms of big data and analytics?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I guess I would start with, it's not just about what we have to learn, but how we have to act. So, and how we interact within our companies. One of the big things that we as professionals need to recognize is that data is an asset that is like gold to the way we run our businesses. And if we treat it that way, it becomes that competitive advantage. It becomes that lifeblood for how we can do analytics. From there, if we have pulled our data in and made it available, made it accessible, made sure that we're not bringing in misinformation into our analytics, then we can invest in the right kinds of visibility tools, the right kinds of analytics. So from a supply chain professional's perspective, you gotta first foster the right mentality within your organization around treating data as an asset. And then on top of that, make sure that you're learning the right tools around visibility, around analytics. So going down to, trend number 4, artificial intelligence and machine learning. What are those techniques that are going to help you become, be able to be predictive and prescriptive about how to orchestrate your supply chain?
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I agree with Cara for the point that she made. I think one of the most important thing is, of course, supply chain is going digital. important thing that become digital is that, just like Cara mentioned. Now, some other companies still have a lot of issue with the data become, fragmented. They cannot find a one version of the truth of the data, and it's not anyone's fault. It's just because it grow with the company, and sometimes the person that responsible for that data set move to another. The person that come in cannot really verify which one is real, which one is accurate, those kind of things. But that's again, we cannot really skip the foundation that you need to not only hawk the data, not only collect, but you need to clean. You make sure that data is integrity is there and accurate before you can apply into, integrate into digital supply chain. The bad data came in is only, going to make it worse. So start it right, start with the foundation and get the clean data and accurate data. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question on the board, and Jit, I'm going to throw this one to you as our essential goods supply chain expert on the panel. With a lot of uncertainties, how do we predict critical raw material price trends?
I think it's a lot of data is out there. If you look into it, if you learn something, you want to learn something that is prediction, you need to tap into the insights and the wisdom of the insurance company. They put a lot of money, they put a lot of investment to learn how to predict things. And I have touched some of the database, some of the companies, some of the people that ask me how did I predict this and predict that. A lot of database are out there, and it's just you just need to have the ability to find it and analyze it, and you can almost see what direction is going to go to. So that said, a lot of things that going on around the market as well. Sometimes some manipulate the data or the way that the market or the products moving. So those kind of thing is kind of sometimes it's hard to predict. Prediction is always wrong, right? But at least you got some idea how it's going to move, and it helped you to be able to prepare, to be able to be I would say have the plan in mind. Supply chain professional, I don't need to talk to you about that, because you always have plan, not only plan A, you have B, C, D, E. If something stuck somewhere, you know how to figure your way, reroute your things and all that. So I think you need to tap into those insights and analyze it and use the computer. You need to use your believe in your guts as well. The feeling that you have sometimes it gives you a lot of insights as well. Of course, talk to the vendors, to the customer, and to people from various industries. You will get from different insight and perspective. I think keep learning, keep get the real data, the real fact, and stay true to it. It doesn't matter if go wrong or go a different way, but at least you need to stay with the fact from my perspective. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you talked a lot about the overall theme, which is supply chain goes digital, and that's one of the ways in which you could help manage some of those essential goods or shortage of materials. Next question, I'm going to throw this one to you, Armand. This asks about what I call some of our evergreen trends that have always been on or near the top. And it relates to risk and resilience, but what are some common strategies when we talk about supply chain risk and resilience?
Well, thank you, Matt. And that's an interesting question because if you talk of the risk side, that's always seen as hedging, as in the defense, and resilience would be how fast can we act in adverse circumstances, which would be more the offense type of doing things. So risk would be at least what we saw is building in buffers where necessary. Resilience would be to look at your processes again and see how can we maintain our customer satisfaction at a good level, even if something in our supply chain would go pear-shaped? So there are actually two ways of looking at the same problem. One is the risk management, where you would put in extras, perhaps have a second or third supplier there. The resilience talks to maybe we set up more local supply chains. Maybe we look at our processes that we can be more autonomous and not dependent upon each other. So I think if you look at strategies, those would be the most common ones. If we then add in the digitization, the data, all of a sudden we can back it up with what I'd like to call science. We actually know where we have to improve our processes to make that difference in the marketplace. And we can limit our buffers and still hedge our risks. Data is an opportunity to make that supply chain more transparent. So I think those two, digitization and risk and resilience, actually go together.
Okay. Thank you, Armand.
Yeah, I might add to that. Yeah, so you touched on a lot of great points there, and with global supply chains, some of the other things that we might see happening are just really having the data connected across the entire ecosystem, so that let's say you have a shortage in one set of parts, maybe you can move your supply base, build out some other products, right? So really having an understanding of what that supply situation is, being able to perhaps change modes of transportation, right? So can you expedite in one area versus another? Do you perhaps need to have additional capacity and the ability to switch where you're doing builds? And I guess the other thing is on the demand side, right? So as we move to more digital, do we have then the opportunity to do demand shaping for the products that we can build, right? Or that we can get through the supply chain? And are there opportunities perhaps to do some SKU reduction so that we have more certainty about the entire supply base for the SKUs that we can build, and less mix uncertainty for what the customers, maybe they're trying to purchase product A, but we can build product B. Well, if we only have product B in our portfolio, maybe we won't get we can demand shape, we'll get the orders on the thing that we can deliver. So in the end, it becomes a more cost-effective supply chain if we can get the right size portfolio with the right amount of agility across the entire supply base.
Okay, thank you. One of you mentioned on the panel global, regional, local supply chains, and someone in the chat line said that should be a trend. Now, actually, that was somewhere in the bottom 10. It didn't quite make it into the top 10, but it is a newer trend making its way up, and I know that's essential to risk, sustainability, some of these other trends.
Number
Maybe
12.
think some trends are enablers of others. Here's a good one. Cara, I'm going to throw this one to you as the one of the machine learning experts on the panel. How can we connect machine learning techniques to our analytics methods, such as our forecasting approaches through our business?
That's an interesting question. I mean, there are a number of machine learning techniques that just simply are forecasting. So I'm not exactly sure what the question is there. In general, enabling machine learning in a business, first you got to have the data, right? That's the main thing. Is you got to have clean data. If we feed a machine learning algorithm with wrong data, we'll get wrong outputs. We've seen that in the chat here already as well. So there's that. Being able to really understand what are the features that are important to the whatever you're trying to forecast, and feeding those into your machine learning algorithms. But then on the other side, and this may be where the question was coming from, is how do you then take that analytic and help the organization actually use it? Because maybe they're not using analytical based forecasting techniques now. Maybe currently it's more of an assumption based model. Well, in that case, you got to go through a process of showing that that machine learning algorithm does perform well relative to what the current business is doing. And so in that case, making sure that you have those visibility tools, make sure that you have the right KPIs to show, okay, this is how the current forecast process is working. Here's how the algorithms can perform better. And maybe the key to this is not to say that it needs to be an all or one, but here are the places where the machine does well. Maybe use it here. Here are places where it doesn't do well. Keep using the current process. Or maybe the machine can do really well to inform the current process. I think what we're not trying to do in general is to take the human out of the loop, but to keep them in the loop and help them to be the right folks to define what are the right features. How do we tweak this model to continue to get better output?
Yeah, I like to add into Cara's point. She brought up great points about the data and the theme that, more and more supply chain become digital. The importance of, the technology, we need to see it as a supply chain practitioner. You need to see technology as, the key to help us achieve the better supply chain. So we mentioned about the question, I believe the question asked how we apply the machine learning into the supply chain, I believe. So there are applications that, help the forecast, the prediction, or how to make those kind of forecasts become more accurate. As we know, the data nowadays become more and more data. Supply chain is also the same thing. A lots of data source bring it in, and sometimes you need to use what the machine is good at. They're good at process of large amount of data, the big data. They do it better than human. So we use those kind of strength from the machine and then let them read it to us. But still, if you think about it, people or supply chain professional is the person that provides visibility, because we still can process the insight, the data, those kind of things to make the decision better than the machine at this point, because it doesn't matter how the algorithm good at this moment, but sometimes they don't add the feeling into it. If you can see, some company have a lot of fancy tools, fancy automation this, automation that, but wait until the dedicated worker wasn't there. Maybe she or he left for a day or two, it become chaos. No one know anything. So it certainly it can apply, it's already applied, and some leading company already have the pilot and impressive result in those terms. Thank you.
If I may add, Matt, that there is already an example of a newspaper company that struggled with the fact that they would supply newspapers at hundreds of locations, and found out that at some locations they still had papers left unsold at the end of the day, and locations where there weren't enough papers at the day. So they developed an algorithm based on the number of people that went to these kinds of stores, the time of day, the opening times, weather, and at that time they actually hired a couple of mathematicians to develop an algorithm. and they actually were able to reduce the waste by a staggering amount, and at the same time build their revenue. So we already see those developments. It's now waiting for the availability to more businesses, where you don't have to hire mathematicians. No, this is also already part of your ERP system.
Right, thank you. Next question, I'm not sure which one of you to direct this towards, because I see all supply chain professionals shouting from the rooftops about sustainability and circularity, but someone in the chat asks, what kinds of circularity were the most common found for the supply chain? I'm not sure who wants to take that one on first. You're all sort of experts in this topic.
Well, I'll take a stab at that.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Right.
So,
We're all jumping in.
Yeah, so I mean, supply, plan, make, source, deliver, right, and then the reverse supply chain. So circularity starts with what kind of materials are in the particular product that we're building. Can we get R&D to design products that are more sustainable to start with? Can we plan for a second life for products so that they're not use and done? So it really starts with what product is being put out into the marketplace in the first place. And then supply chain picks that up and decides where to source. And that comes down to, is it, so some of those rare materials, how do we go after those? And are we being good to the planet as we're sourcing those materials? It also comes down to logistics. Once we get those materials, how are we bringing them into our factories? What kind of factory dynamics do we have? How sustainable are the practices in the build process? And then as you go all the way through to the customer and then end of life, can we take that back in an efficient way? Can it be repurposed, right? So the longer the life of the product, the better. And there are lots of touch points along the way where supply chain can make choices that are more carbon neutral than perhaps what we did last year or the year before. And there's lots of room for us to improve in this area as a global set of citizens.
Great, thank you. Jit, Armand, do you have anything you'd like to add? Because I know, as I mentioned, sustainability is a topic near and dear to supply chain professionals.
Okay, I'm gonna go first, Armand, if you don't mind, before I forget, right? So, thank you. For the most common theme that I see for circular and sustainability in supply chain is look into how they can, save the energy. That's the first thing that they do, because the bill is going higher and higher. You can see from your own house, it's even more for the business. So they look into how they can use the natural light instead of turning on the light, and how they can use the way to cool down during the summer instead of using electricity, or how can they harvest the clean energy and supplement that into using fuel or gas or those kind of things. Those are the top things that I see. But then I would like to remind people or business that you don't need to look very far. When you look into the circular or sustainability, we can see that a lot of, if you look into UN ASG, those kind of things, you can apply into it. And we don't need to look very far into other country. Every country can pursue that. Our people, some people still need to work 3-4 jobs to make the end meet. So those kind of things, it's everywhere. Very far. You don't need to point fingers fingers, we all have to make it better. So I encourage, both individual and also business to put into it. If you believe in it, I think it's a great thing to pursue. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
Just to, I don't know whether there's still room to build upon that, but I think Cara touched upon the essence of what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years, where we need to go into our supply chain and design the way things in a different way. But also on the demand side, we see this happening in the fashion industry. We've got a staggering 50% goods return, and the technology is now aiming at making it easier for the customer to order the right size, or making out that they have the right color, so they do pick the right product. It's better for the customer, and it surely will cut the entire reverse logistics. I'm thinking of CO2, but also just the process of deciding which product can be resold, which product has to be scrapped. So that there's a lots of potentials we can still explore.
Okay, thank you, Armand. We are about 36 minutes in. If you have any additional questions you'd like to get in, again, I'm keeping an eye on the chat line here. But here's one that's different from the others, and I think it's worth mentioning. Cara, I'm going to put you on the spot again, because this was one of your topics of choice, but where did labor and staffing fall on the list?
Yeah, so it was on the top 10 last year and fell off this year of the top 10, but it is in our top 20. I guess what I would say is each one of us, we have a really broad team that put this list together, and any one of us might have put together a different top 10 with maybe some changes in the bottom. So talent management and how we develop our people to have the right skills and bring in the right folks for this sort of next generation of supply chain is still super important. And what I would say is it's embedded in the concept of big data and analytics are, first and foremost as one of our trends. Digital supply chain, you can't do that without the right skills. Supply chain risk and resilience. It takes real training and expertise around, what does variability really mean, and how do you design for the different scenarios. All that's going to take the right talent to help the organizations thrive. So it's not on our list because it fell down a couple of rungs, but it is embedded in each of the things that we're trying to achieve, or that we feel like are those competitive advantages to customers, or to the industry.
That's very telling to a lot of the sentiments I'm seeing in the chat, that supply chain is going digital, big data and analytics, digital supply chain. There's going to be a need for that knowledge. That's where the talent management lies, just to reiterate what you said. And I know one of our incoming, or actually now sworn in board member, Amy Augustine, if you were listening, she put it very nicely, where talent management is sort of embedded in those top 5 trends.
Mm-hmm.
Jit, Armand, did you have anything you wanted to add to talent management and labor in supply chain?
Absolutely. So I look at the top 20 trend. It's fall from last year to talent management fall into number 13 this year. So it's still there. I think a lot of the discussion has been going on. Sometimes we see like, how can that be? How can be lack of people? Because we have a lot of, it's not 1970, student already graduate in supply chain field, and some of them are still looking for jobs, here and there. But that's when we consider talent, is part of the thing. Is what they really meant is a skill that lacked to build or to suit the transformation that they want to do. So I think part of it is just the education side. Sometimes it's just focus on the theory and the concept, and the business side on the organization or the practice field is already moving very fast. Sometimes the skill, those kind of skills in supply chain, it's meant to receive through the collaboration. That's why cross-functional collaboration is important. You might need to partner with the IT, with the CSCO, need to talk more with the CFO, with the CEO, those kind of things, so that you can get the blend of the talents that you need. Because not all the data scientists who understand supply chain process, and forget to include the forefront workers that they need the most. And sometimes it's just you just need to pick and choose. And I believe that focus on what needs to be done is important, but also you don't forget that you need to apply cross-functional collaboration as well to achieve those kind of talents together. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jit. I would love to get everyone's questions across. Let's roll out one more, and this is sort of a summation of a couple of questions I've seen, but we've seen a logistics trend pop up, a standalone logistics trend, logistics vulnerability. Jit, I'm going to throw, I know you just spoke, but how can organizations manage logistics vulnerabilities?
Well, that is a very good question. So we pretty much see, when we went to school, no one teach us that how can you manage to move the things, 6 feet apart, right? So everything came crashed down. And if you think about it, logistic is a big part in supply chain. Now we separate in terms of logistic and supply chain, because when you look from the operational perspective, supply chain is pretty much belong to organization, and logistic is the real moving part, right? The real moving part from carrying stuff from supplier, from manufacturer, from warehouse, up until to customer, and it's a big industry. So it requires different assets, different skill set, different network that they need to operate it on. Now, when the disruption came down and people can't really find the worker, or some may just worry about their safety or whatever, so those kind of thing is kind of came crashing down. The port become lacking enough worker and could not move the freight fast enough. Those kind of things, we can see those kind of issue. Now, how can we fix that is very difficult. You can't really fix it on your own. This is bigger than one company or one person can solve. It's required all other industry to collaborate and to help one another. So some of the company that have enough investment, you can see like Walmart or some other company that they buy their own chip, those kind of things. They try to manage so that they can get the stuff to the shelf to sell and all that. But that said, not every company have that kind of capability or funding to do. So the best way that you can approach is to strengthening the relationship. Have you realized that the customer that really trusts you, that really understand you, will try to understand you are trying to help them, and you also have the good relationship with the supplier. You don't squeeze every cent out of them. It's just they also need to survive. If they don't survive, you become high risk as well. So it's the time that you cannot just think about yourself. It's a time that, I think this is embedded into most of the supply chain professional, that you need to be fair. You need to be transparent, because trust is the most important thing to make to keep things moving, including in business, personal, professional. It's everything is important. So you have, the network. You can ask for help and come up with the innovative solution. You cannot rely on just traditional solution as well. And I think that's a good thing, that is, you can see a lot more the new breed of logistic coming. If you drive on the road, you can see, the smaller version of the truck that hauls stuff, here and there. Those new entrepreneurs and do that, because they don't need to be regulation like, the big truck. So you can see, people try to manage, and the cost is just substantially high, and a lot of business cannot absorb that kind of shock in the short term. So what I'm trying to say is collaboration, building trust, and manage the good relationship. It is the best case for this, because logistics is a big industry. You can't solve it on your own. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And Matt, I might add to that just a couple of specific things that folks might do in this area, because that was a really good overview, Jit. So one, just really understanding the types of variability that might be expected in the supply chain and buffering for them. So that's one area. Another is redundancy. So being able to switch suppliers or switch modes of transportation. And another is just really having a good handle on where your products are. So having that good data to be able to then prioritize, once you have a disruption, how do you want to prioritize what moves first? And so that you can focus your energy. So those are some of the things, just in terms of, now, once you're in that vulnerable position, something happened, do you have the the risk and resilience sort of background of, or structure in place to handle what's just happened or about to happen?
Thank you. I'm going to take one last question, because I think this one helps tie the theme that the subcommittee came up with to what I see a growing theme. So maybe think outside of trend number 7. And Armand, I'm going to start you with this one. Maybe think of some of these other trends. How could they impact or create a positive impact on climate change issues that we are facing now?
That's a great question, because it actually again talks to how things are interlinked. So the force we see now is that, and I'm afraid we haven't really paid that much attention to climate change, and now all of a sudden we've got a, for lack of a better word, an energy crisis, and now it forces us to rethink how we do things. So if we just start thinking of the unnecessary movements we have in our supply chains, just think of the example I gave of the fashion industry, where we have this really enormous reverse flow coming back, just because we cannot supply our customers with the right product. So the one side is we can really push for energy neutral solutions. The other thing is, if we look at the data, by using data, we are better able to cater for let's say a more effective and efficient source, make, and deliver. In the sourcing, it becomes, because we have more transparency in our supply chain, we know where we can make a difference. In making it, we can prioritize the energy sources that are available. And in delivery, we've got a choice. It now ranges from electric to even bikes, if we look at the last mile, to conventional trucks. So if you look at climate change, every of these aspects can have a positive impact, because they all give us a better understanding of what's happening in our supply chain, which leads to better decisions, therefore less waste. And most of the waste we find has an impact on the energy consumption, and if we take it a step further, in the natural resources we use. So it's not just energy, but it's also all the materials we source.
Right. Thank you, Armand. Cara, Jit, if you don't have anything else to add to that, I think we can.
I'd be happy to add to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great overview. And one thing I would say is that we're getting some really over time, our consumers are becoming more demanding about sustainability and circularity. Government regulations are coming into play that are demanding sustainability, circularity. And those things help us to make better decisions. So we talk about data, we talk about analytics, we talk about how we're going to build our supply chains for better efficiency. And really, in the end, everything we do, if we were to be able to predict exactly what the customer wanted, we could all the way through our supply chain make everything more efficient, just as Armand said, right? Now, if then we also, for the way we're optimizing, we choose to not just optimize for cost, but we optimize for profit and for the impact on the environment in all of our algorithms as we go digital, that's how we make the difference to circularity in a real positive way.
Great. Thank you. All right, with that, we are out of time. I want to thank everyone who joined us today and asked great questions, but most importantly, I want to thank Jit, Armand, and Cara for taking their time to give so many people their knowledge. And thank you, everyone. The report is available on our LinkedIn page to download if you want to look at the trends in more nuance and see all the 20 trends that were voted upon to create this top 10. With that, thank you, panel, and thank you, audience.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I see those chats. I'm reading it, so appreciate it. Thank you so much.